discriminatory way. It would not matter whether one is tall, one is short, one is brown, one is black, one speaks a different language or adheres to a different culture or gender or any other idiosyncrasies. It would be a similar responsiveness. I'm not saying that if one is disabled and the other one is able, you would not be able to empower the disabled to be able to meet certain conditions. That is called accommodation. It does not take away from responsiveness. The next one is participation. For example, when we have elections, it has to be, the way of conducting elections have to be participatory. It has to be open and transparent. It has to be fair, right? So that the results can reflect the will of the people. That is a positive principle. Efficiency and effectiveness on institutions and people who hold public office is the third one. You want to be able to do an exam today, and in 2 weeks, you should be expecting the results. It cannot be fair, it cannot be effective or efficient that 3 months or 6 months later, the results have not come out, or you do not know when they are going to come out. I'm just giving that as an example. The fourth one is openness and transparency. You should be able to go to the registrar's office and ask to see your file, and it's actually produced in short order. It cannot be transparent. It cannot be open when it is opaque. I know that word has acquired currency in this country. It has to be transparent. And it has to be transparent to everyone. Unless there is a law of secrecy, for example, on national intelligence or security, which is known. So you know there is a law, you know there is a code of secrecy, you know where it applies, and you know this information cannot be given. Or there is a tender, and you know that this box is a tender box. People are supposed to put in their bids. And between the 1st and the 15th, the box will not be opened, but it will be opened on the 16th. And it will be opened in a public manner so that everybody sees who has won the tender. The fifth one is rule of law. You all know how many court orders were disobeyed in my case, right? Rule of law dictates that before you accuse anybody of anything, you give them notice. The notice has to be in writing. The notice has to give reasons why you suspect they did something. Then you must give them an opportunity to answer to the charges or allegations. It must be before an independent, impartial tribunal or court. And they must have a right to hire a lawyer or advocate if they need it. And then you have to allow them to air, to test, to interrogate the charges. They must be able to ask questions about the allegations. So they must take you to court. And once the court has processed this allegation to the end, an independent, impartial, neutral tribunal or judge has to render judgment, again in writing, and give reasons. And if somebody disagrees with these judgments, they appeal. So abducting me from my house, destroying it, and then destroying my passport, then forcing me into a plane, going to where I don't want to go, and I did not book a flight. Then after you do that, you stop me from coming back. That's not rule of law. Again, and I know this one has been propagated by the Githeri media for a long time. You cannot deport by law a citizen from his own country. That does not happen. It's like saying you can have a child without becoming pregnant. You can't. It's an impossibility. All right? A woman has to get pregnant to get a child. Even test tube babies have to be, the fertilization has to take place. The same here. If somebody has citizenship, the only thing you do, you take them to court. If you take them out of the country to another country, that's not called a deportation. That's called a rendition. A rendition, the media will not tell you that. Or, if the person is wanted in another country and has been charged or convicted and therefore warrants of arrest have been issued by the Interpol, the international police, you can extradite them. You do not deport a citizen. So when the media says, Miguna was deported, Miguna was deported, you see, you ask yourself, honestly, these people went to school. Why don't they just go to the dictionary and check what is the meaning of deportation? That's so hard. Even Google will tell you. You know, the elementary school teacher called Google will tell you deportation is a process. Number one, the person being deported must be a foreigner, not a citizen. And you cannot be a foreigner if you are born in in this country, which means there's no process of being unborn. Miguna was only born once. The umbilical cord was buried in Magina village. You cannot unborn him. So, so there has to be a notice, first of all, to me, if I was a foreigner, which I am not. So there is a notice which tells me I have to go somewhere and show cause why I can continue to be in this country having violated this or that law. And then I go before a tribunal. Even as a foreigner, that's the process of removing them. You cannot go get these Chinese walking on the streets and immediately take them to JKIA and then remove them. That's illegal. Because you don't know what they're doing on the street. So you have to accord them due process of the law. And you can never subvert the Constitution, which is what happened in this case, violate the law, which has happened in this case, disobey court orders. So rule of law is a cardinal principle in good governance. You don't have rule of law, you cannot have democracy. You don't have rule of law, you cannot have predictability of court cases or any, and you cannot tell the MAGAs on the street to obey the law when the chief MAGA lives in State House. You cannot. They are also watching the news. And when they see me being pushed into a plane and I don't want to go, and they tear my clothes, and then they destroy the passport, then they say they don't care about court orders, they cannot tell a MAGA that he should stop magging. Because the same rule should apply to State House and also on the street. That is where we go wrong. That is why we cannot stop criminality, because it has to start at the top. If you don't do it at the top, don't expect these guys to comply. Ethical conduct. It may seem like music, but people who hold positions in public office or people who occupy public office must conduct themselves in a manner that adheres to good ethics. If you go to a public office, and it happened some time back, and a governor or a cabinet secretary tells you that they spent 100,000 buying condoms, you must say it is wrong. Isn't it? Because that is not the purpose of that public office. It's not a brothel. What are you doing with condoms in the office? Right? So right away you know it is wrong. You don't have to give me a PhD dissertation on what is wrong. You just know it is wrong. And many others. Number 7, competence and capacity. As I said, there are so many people that hold public office, and you know. You don't have even to ask them, where did you go to school? Do you have this diploma or certificate? You just know this guy is incompetent. Right? Like the other day, somebody says, we are going to make sure there is no funding for public universities. Now, you know that is incompetence because you ask yourself, so your office is Minister of Education. That's a public office. And you're supposed to be presiding over public education, but you're saying you want to render yourself unemployed by getting rid of public education, which is why you are appointed. So he wants to be Minister of Education of private institutions. You see what I mean? He could just apply to be Director of KEMU. If that's what he's interested in. You have no business being in public sphere if you do not understand what it entails. It does not require a degree. It requires a logical mind. And you don't need a degree to be logical. You don't need a diploma to be logical. You just have to have a modicum of competence. Your mind must be able to work like it's supposed to be once you have a moderate level of IQ. Capacity is just being able to do what you're supposed to do. A mechanic is supposed to repair my car, and I'm not supposed to tell him how to do it. He's supposed to know how to diagnose the problem. He's supposed to fix it. The car is supposed to go, to run. If the car has not come to an end of its lifespan and should be discarded. How many people do you know in this country that do not know even why they are appointed into the positions they are appointed? And they are very high up there. In fact, the only qualification they have for appointment is that they are incompetent. It's progress. If you don't have this, you cannot progress. You will not go anywhere because you would not even know that you made a mistake the last time because you are navel-gazing. Sustainability and long-term orientation is another one. I just have 2 more. If you are not self-sustaining because you are not injecting fresh blood, then again, you cannot grow. You cannot become anything if you don't have long-term goals. The fact that you don't know that Miguna has long-term goals doesn't mean I don't have. But I'm simply saying we must all have long-term goals. You don't have to declare them. You just have to have them. But as an institution, private or public, it must be known. People within the institution must know. So you set your goals and you work towards them. And the decisions taken must be shared. The 10th one is sound financial management. If you go to the Parliament of Kenya, whether the National Assembly or Senate, if you go to the counties of Kenya, if you go to the Treasury, everything is murky, almost everything. And it's been like that for 60 years. That is why we are a third world. That is why despite hard work of Kenyans, despite high productivity by Kenyans, despite the creativity that I've seen even here at KEMU, we are going backwards while other countries took off and are developed. They give you the example of Singapore. They give you the example of Malaysia. They give you the example of South Korea. They give you many examples. Countries that Kenya used to give money to. But now, we go with a begging bowl. And I know most of the students here want to leave Kenya and go abroad. They don't want to stay. Almost 90% of them, probably close to 100. And that is wrong. Because you can change your country, you can transform it, and that will be the motto of transformation. Because the youth dictate the future. The last one, human rights, cultural diversity, and social cohesion. They say that you judge a people, a culture, a civilization, a country by how it treats its most vulnerable. So if you go out there and you find somebody who has been run over by a vehicle and you just walk and go, something is wrong with you. If you see somebody being attacked and you don't feel anything, something is wrong with you. If you see a victim of injustice and you spit at them, or you jeer at them, or you cheer the person inflicting harm, something seriously is wrong with you. In a way, you are barbaric and uncivilized. Whether it is a country, whether it is a person, whether it is an institution, there has to be the ability to adhere to the principles of human rights, cultural diversity, and social cohesion. When you see people performing like the guys who performed here, even if you don't understand the language, even if you don't understand the way of life, you have to be able to appreciate that it is other people's culture. It may not be yours, but it is not less than yours. Then the last question is where I started, which is, with all this, in academics they call them problematique. In all these problems and of course experiences, how do we have international integration? That's a question for you to answer. I finish there. Thank you very much for listening.